Argentina's already tried moving to the dollar once in the 1990s. The result was a total depression. What is going to happen is this. If they move to the dollar, the wealthy Argentinians are going to do what they did 30 years ago in the 1990s. They will borrow from the banks that essentially they own. They will make loans by the banks they own to themselves in Argentine currency. They will convert these into dollars, and they will move these dollars offshore. The Argentinian ruling class is a very narrow ruling class of about 50 families. Argentina, for the last 100 years, has been probably the worst dictatorship in South America, even worse and more violent than that of Chile and the other Latin American countries. At the end of the 19th century, Argentina was considered the richest country in Latin America, maybe in the world. It's mines, it's silver mines, which is why it was called Argentina, from argent, meaning silver. It had huge land where it herded beef and cattle, huge agricultural land. It seemed to be, in terms of its natural resources, the richest country in the world. And yet it very quickly, by World War I, for more than a century, it's been the poorest country in Latin America because it's been the most unequal country. And what I found, as I think I've mentioned before, in 1990, when finally international lending began again, almost all of Argentina's dollar debt was owned by Argentinian and Brazilian families. The oligarchy of Argentina and Brazil have always worked together to prevent any kind of economic development that takes the form of rising wages, of rising living standards, better conditions. So Argentina will essentially borrow from the International Monetary Fund, meaning the US Defense Department is going to tell IMF, which is part of NATO, basically, to lend the money to Argentina, and there will be a whole huge expansion of new dollar loans to Argentina, meaning to the Argentine banks controlled by the 50 families to lend their money in Argentinian pesos, to convert into dollars, to move offshore, and you'll have all Argentina's wealth moved out of Argentina by the 50 families, leaving the Argentinian population to impose austerity, ostensibly to pay the International Monetary Fund and bondholders back for the money that they lent to the Argentine military oligarchy to maintain its control. I don't see any way in which the Argentine economy can be rescued without a revolution. There's no way of doing it peacefully, because after the Chilean coup d'etat of Pinochet, you had the Americans organize a mass assassination program throughout Latin America. And Argentina was known for killing tens of thousands of labor leaders, university professors, journalists, anyone who opposed fascism basically was taken up in a helicopter, stabbed in the stomach, thrown out of a helicopter into the ocean, and disposed of. That was their preferred way of dealing with critics of the regime. The question is, are these loans that are being made to Argentina, is Argentina's debt odious debt? Is this a kind of debt that the Argentine people really need to repay? The reason that Argentina has an inflation is that any hyperinflation is not caused simply by printing money to develop the economy and help it go. Argentina's hyperinflation comes from the balance of payments deficit. It comes from capital flight. It comes from the absence of currency controls to prevent capital flight, such as China has or other countries have had. So as long as there is this capital flight out of Argentina, there's going to be a continued hyperinflation, and debt payment is part of this capital flight. If you pay foreign debt that you've run up in order to avoid taxing the richest 50 families of Argentina, if you're going to run up foreign debt and pay debt service to the International Monetary Fund and other bondholders in the United States and Europe, then you're not going to have any money to develop public infrastructure, to develop universities, to develop transportation, or to develop one's own resources and become the kind of industrial economic power that people had expected Argentina to be in the late 19th century, which is why so many Europeans, especially Italians, were moving to Argentina at that time. And there was a long discussion when there was talk of founding a Jewish state in the late 19th century. There was a long discussion, should the Jewish state be in Palestine, where Jews used to live, or should it be in Argentina, in Patagonia? And the founder of Israeli Zionism preferred Argentina because he said the weather's better there. Quite correctly. And there was a lot of pressure in Zionism to actually relocate in Argentina because that seemed to be the most promising economic environment in the entire world when the idea of Zionism was first being voiced in the late 19th century. Well, we know that they didn't move to Argentina. There was some talk of their moving to northern Greece, some talk of their moving to Madagascar. It was the Britain and the United States that pushed them to move to Palestine because they said, well, we already control Argentina. We don't need a Western outpost there. What we really want to control is the Near East. That's why we want the Jewish homeland to be right in the Near East, where it can fight against Islam. So from the very beginning of the settlement in Palestine, the slogan was "a people without a land," meaning the Jews who'd been cosmopolitan, and a land without people. Well, of course, there were people there. They were called Palestinians. The land without people meant after we killed them, there won't be any more people. That's what it meant, a land without people. In the founding of Israel, the intention of Britain and the United States was essentially ethnic cleansing, was racism as a military base to destroy Islam. I think Islam is finally realizing this, that the fight in Gaza and the West Bank is a staging ground for the fight that has been planned for the last 75 years against Islam, which is a continuation, a replay of the original Crusades from 1094 to 1291. All of this has occurred for 2 centuries, 1,000 years ago. It's now being replayed now, but with much more sophisticated weaponry.